Hey, what's going on everybody? My name is Cruz and welcome back to another video. In this one we're going to discuss how I currently use the Presonus Faderport. If you still happen to be here despite my failed efforts in my last video, then thank you. But please do all of the things that help this channel grow. Like this video, comment, and subscribe below, and be sure to hit the bell icon so you get an alert every single time I upload a video. Without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so this one's actually not going to be too in-depth or like a review or anything like that. I'm just going to quickly run through how I use a piece of gear that sits on my desk all the time. It's actually a piece of gear that's so important to me that I rearranged my desk and essentially expanded the square footage of my desk, so to speak, so that I could put this back on my desk, and that is the Presonus Faderport. This still happens to be the early version. They have a newer version out right now, and in fact this thing is not perfect. It's got some quirks to it, and I'll explain why I don't always love it. But at the end of the day, I'm going to explain to you why I do like it. This video is based on a comment that someone recently left on one of my videos asking why do I like it so much. I didn't quite get it or understand it, and I get it. It's definitely not one of those pieces of gear that you need to have. So let me say that right before we jump into this whole thing. This is not a must-have gear. You do not need this piece of gear to get started, whether it's here on YouTube, recording, playing guitar, certainly playing guitar. So this is not one of those things that if you don't have it, it's a deal breaker. You can definitely function without it, but I'm going to explain to you why I personally have it. And to be honest with you, I actually wish I had a full-blown studio board here in my studio. Before we continue, I'm just going to quickly open up an old session here so you can sort of see how this thing works. For all of you who have been asking, I'm currently using the Presonus Studio 1 DAW, and I'm using a Presonus iAudio Box 2 interface for all of my tracking. For the sake of not wanting to like bust out hard drives to open up old sessions, I'm just going to open up one of the sessions that I've kind of been working on lately. Actually, I haven't released it. It's more so in the works to be released, but I just haven't had the time to work on it because I've been kind of working so hard with making sure that I have enough content here on YouTube. So I'm going to open it up real quick. Maybe this will force me to start working on it a little bit more, but for now, let me just show you how the Faderport works here. So I've opened up a session. One of the things you may have noticed was that the automation immediately kicked in. And that's one of the features that I originally fell in love with, and that's the automation. That means that every time I move it onto a track, it's going to adjust to the settings of that track. So for example, as I scroll through the various tracks, you're going to see that automation kicking in to the volume of each track. And that's a really amazing feature, and that's one of those things that I personally loved but also felt like I needed in my studio. Now you just saw me using my mouse to scroll through the tracks, but I can also do that right here by using the channel selector, and it goes to all of the tracks. And as you can see, hopefully you can, the automation is kicking in and moving per track, and you could see the track scrolling through on this session right here. That's another beautiful thing. So basically, yes, I could use a mouse, yes, I could use my keyboard, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just want to press a button and go. It's sort of like having quick access to something, quick keys, short keys, whatever you want to call them, to be able to do one thing very, very fast. It's the reason why I fell in love with products like the Boss ES5 on my pedal board. It's a switcher. I press one button and it does a bunch of functions. Well, it's the same concept. I press a button, I stop the track. I press a button, I start a track. That's all you get for now. So one of the main reasons why I use the Faderport, or any system like the Faderport, doesn't have to be this particular one, but something like this, was because I essentially fell in love with the studio of the old. My first real experience as an artist and as a musician stepping into a recording studio for me to record in was in front of a Neve board. Like, it was, how could you get better than that? It was amazing, and seeing how the engineer knew his way not just around the board but around the entire studio, the way he was listening and the way that he was maneuvering every single knob and fader, and it just made me fall in love with it. In fact, that engineer that I'm talking about, he's a Grammy nominated engineer. His name is Steve Eigner, and me and a good friend of mine basically sat under him for over an entire year as he taught us pretty much as he could, not just only about studio and equipment, but more so how to use your ear and how to get the best out of every single session that you're in. He was a perfectionist to the point where I don't know if I'll ever be able to truly emulate just how much of a perfectionist he actually was. But at the end of the day, he taught me something, and that was you just push a little bit and you can get better results out of every single person. We were all capable of sounding better and actually performing the tracks so much better, and he made us better musicians at the end of that year. And certainly, I feel like I walked away with an education that, quite honestly, I would have been willing to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for. And I know that people have paid for that education, so the fact that I got it for free essentially was just really, really amazing. And I was honored. But I learned everything pretty much writing a fader. And even back in the day, some of my earliest experiences were on a soundboard in a live situation at the back of my church, right? Like actually bringing up a volume and bringing it down, bringing up gain, bringing it down. Eventually learning how to manipulate certain features that the board had, like EQs, maybe incorporate things like compression and gating and limiting. As those features became readily available on soundboards, it was an amazing experience, and I preferred that experience. So getting back to the reason why I use the Faderport, it's simply because it makes me feel like I'm actually working in a studio versus just holding my mouse and actually doing everything in the box. And if you don't know that reference, that's essentially a reference that studio people use saying, hey, we're going to use internal plugins, we're not going to use anything external, and we're going to use our mouse and keyboard to manipulate all of those plugins. Well, in this particular situation, though I work all in the box as well, I rarely use anything external outside of my actual guitars and pedals. I still prefer to feel like I'm sitting behind a console. Now, if you start pricing this stuff out, you're going to quickly learn that one of the main reasons why I chose the Faderport was because it's super affordable and does a lot for that price point. Because these things get really, really expensive, especially the more tracks you want readily available. So for example, if you're using the Faderport, there are different levels. They have bigger versions, mid-size, large size, and these things can get really, really, really out of hand from, in terms of pricing. So I found that it was really convenient to be able to use the bank feature or the channel feature and select which channel I want to actually be in and have that automation quickly adjust to that channel that I'm actually in, so that maybe I can't maneuver multiple tracks at the same time, but I can certainly quickly get to them and maneuver them that way. It's also sped up my workflow, and for two reasons. Number one, I feel like I can dial in something a lot easier by maneuvering the fader versus trying to use my mouse to bring the fader up and down or to get an exact science down with inputting numbers. I've never really been that kind of a musician or engineer. One of the most valuable components here on the Faderport is this little pan button right here. This pan button allows me to exactly dial in how much I want to pan something to the left or to the right. Now I get it, that seems like a minute feature before a guitarist who really wants his guitars to sound big. Panning is everything, and that feature right there was absolutely one of the highlights of this product. Finding out that I can really tweak things very, very finely and not needing to use the mouse to do that. Like, and I don't want to make it sound like I hate the mouse. Obviously, I love this mouse. We all need them. I mean, it helps us with our computers. But at the end of the day, having something like this gives me my console-like feel, and it just makes me feel like I'm actually working in a studio, on a studio session, on a track, even though, hey, I'm working in my home studio just like a lot of you are. Of course, there are a lot of features in this small compact unit. You can use the shift button also to get secondary features very quickly. I mean, I can bring the mix up, bring it down. I can bring the project up, which focuses on individual tracks. I can bring all of my effects and some of my external plugins in really quickly. I can undo things really quickly. I can put this stuff away super fast, which is like super, super convenient. Most importantly, I can have a guitar in my hand and press one button and record and not worry about it, right? So like if I were gonna just quickly start recording a track here, I just press record and it's recording, it's going. I can stop it, I can undo that, I can go right back to the position where I started, go again. That's really, really important for me here in the studio. You can record, you can quickly solo a track, you can quickly mute a track. These are things that I found to be really, really useful here in my studio and just made my workflow a lot easier. And look, you guys know I'm huge on functionality, so this made life more functional for me. But now that I talked about the things I love about this product, I'm going to talk about some of the things I don't like so much. Now, I haven't tried the newest version, so I can't say that they haven't already made these corrections, but I'm going to tell you my experience with this particular version. It's just kind of quirky. Over the years, that I believe it's a membrane style push, which you would basically see in a lot of, like, for example, what's in most laptops here, that's a membrane style key push right here. Unlike what you see on my personal keyboard right in front of me, that is actually a mechanical keyboard, not membrane. So when you press on something, number one, you hear it. Number two, you feel it. And number three, it actually works and it does what it says it's gonna do. Versus what we got going on here. So you might have even seen the quirkiness when I tried pressing project. I just pressed project and nothing happened. I'm gonna press it again and again. It just flickered. Now I'm gonna press it again. And there it is. It's not that the product is not communicating with my computer or the actual operating system. It's not that. It's literally the functionality of the product itself is starting to go on me. It worked a lot quicker back in the day, and now not so much. You see that flutter? It eventually does what I want it to do, but it sometimes takes 2 or 3 tries, and that's really frustrating. Probably the most frustrating thing, though, about how this thing is starting to go on me is how it stopped playing. So the play button just no longer works. It used to. There were times where if I pressed it a certain way, it would work, but now it no longer does that. And I had to revert back to using my actual spacebar because it no longer plays from the Faderport. I actually opened this product up because I'm kind of, savvy with technology and I'm able to sometimes fix some stuff. There was nothing visibly wrong, so I have to chalk it up to this is just something that happens. When I looked on forums, it turns out, yes, it was a very common problem, specifically with the play button. It just starts to go on people and it stops working. So hopefully the newer versions have corrected that. In fact, I have a studio friend of mine who's currently using one right now in his studio and he says his is working perfectly. So whatever system they're using here obviously must have been upgraded and is working a lot better, but I know this one is giving me some problems. But with that said, I'm so passionate and thankful to have a product like this that I'd be willing to spend the money to upgrade this one. So even though it has failed on me and it's starting to go bad, I actually am heavily consider replacing it with the newer version. Now, from what I understand, I obviously haven't been able to test it myself. This can be compatible with almost all DAWs out there. However, I'm currently using it as a native product, so I'm using it with a Presonus based product. As I mentioned before, I'm using the Presonus Studio One Artist DAW, and therefore I can use this without any problems. The installation process was literally super easy and the DAW read it immediately and I was able to start using it right away. No specialty installations or anything like that. Everything worked perfectly right out of the box. So that's another thing that I really love. Just easy access to be able to start and go. I don't want to make things super complicated, as some products can definitely be complicated. That's pretty much it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do me a favor, let me know in the comment section below if you use something like this. Maybe you're using a board of some sort, which is great, but I fell in love with the automation. So let me know what you're using. If you agree with me that for you to feel like you're working on a track, you need to have your hands on a fader of some sort. That's definitely my preference. Let me know your opinions, your thoughts, and also do me a favor, if you have the newer version of the Faderport, please let me know if it's giving you the same issues, if you're having the same problems with pressing certain buttons and them not working over time, or maybe you out there have developed a quick fix to that problem and there's something that I can do to repair that, because that would be amazing and certainly a lot less money than buying a brand new one. Please do me a favor, do all of the things that help this channel grow. Like this video, comment and subscribe below, and be sure to hit the bell icon so you get an alert every single time I upload a video. Thanks again for watching, and until next time.